Diabetes. What you need to know. The purpose of this program is to help you learn more about diabetes, what causes it, and how to know if you have it. 12 million Americans have diabetes. The American Diabetes Association estimates that half of those people, about 6 million, don't know they have diabetes. That means about 1 in 20 people, possibly 1 or 2 people in this room, could have diabetes. No matter what you may have heard, any of us can get diabetes. That's why it's important to learn about this disease and know the signs. What is diabetes? The medical term is diabetes mellitus. You may have heard diabetes called high sugar or sugar diabetes, and some people think diabetes is caused by eating too much sugar. Diabetes is not caused by eating too much sugar, although it does involve the foods we eat, and eating too much can be part of the problem. So what is diabetes? Diabetes is a disease that affects our body's ability to use food for energy. Diabetes usually does not interfere with digestion, but it does prevent a person's body from using glucose, which is produced from the food we eat. There are 2 major types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is also called insulin dependent, which means that people who are affected must take insulin to stay alive. This form of diabetes usually starts in children and occurs mostly in people under age 20. It occurs in people over age 20, but it begins under age 20. Type 2 diabetes is sometimes called non-insulin dependent because people with this type frequently can control their diabetes without insulin. This form of diabetes usually starts in adults over 40 who are overweight and have a family history of diabetes. We'll talk more about these types of diabetes in a few moments. To understand diabetes, let's look at what happens in our body when we eat food. All the foods we eat are classified as either carbohydrates, such as bread, vegetables, fruits, and cereals, proteins, found in dairy products and meat, or fats, butter, oils, margarine, bacon, and salad dressings. After we eat these foods, they are digested and broken down, or converted into glucose. Glucose is a form of sugar, so that's why you may hear people call diabetes a sugar disease. After these foods we eat are moved into the intestines, the glucose is absorbed into the bloodstream and carried to all parts of the body to be used for energy. But before glucose can be used by the body's cells, a hormone called insulin must be present to help the glucose enter the cells. Insulin is produced by the pancreas, and when food enters our body, the pancreas releases insulin into the bloodstream. A simple way to understand this is to think of insulin as a key that unlocks the door to our cells and allows the glucose to get inside. Once the glucose is inside the cell, it can be used for energy. When a person has diabetes, glucose enters the bloodstream normally, but in a person with type 1 diabetes, the pancreas does not produce enough insulin to allow the glucose to enter the cells. This is why a person with type 1 diabetes must take insulin shots to stay alive. In the type 2 diabetic person, the pancreas usually produces insulin, but the insulin doesn't work properly, just like a key that won't open a door. Therefore, in either case, glucose builds up in the blood and eventually may spill over into the urine. This buildup of excess glucose in the blood is referred to as hyperglycemia, or high blood sugar. When glucose starts spilling over into our urine, this produces the symptoms of diabetes. Usually the first sign of diabetes is frequent urination, especially at night. This is followed by unusual thirst, the feeling that you just can't get enough to drink. Another important symptom of diabetes is fatigue, just feeling like you don't have any energy. The person feels so tired because the body isn't burning enough glucose for energy. Other symptoms of diabetes might include a sudden weight loss, even when the person is eating the same amount, blurred vision, Changes in vision that come and go could be important. Infections or wounds that are slow to heal might also be a warning sign. Now, some people with these symptoms may not have diabetes, but if you or someone you know has these complaints, contact a doctor. Let's look at who gets diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is also called insulin-dependent diabetes because these patients must take insulin injections to stay alive. You may have heard this called juvenile diabetes because it usually starts in children under the age of 20. The symptoms of type 1 diabetes usually come on very suddenly. This form of diabetes only accounts for 10% of the diabetes patients in the United States, about 1 million people. Most of us here are unlikely to develop type 1 diabetes at our age, but our children or grandchildren could get it. Type 2 diabetes is frequently called non-insulin dependent diabetes because these people may be able to control their diabetes without taking insulin. You may have heard this called maturity onset diabetes because it usually occurs after age 40. This type accounts for 90% of all diabetes in the United States. That's about 10 million people. As we said before, half of these people don't know they have diabetes. The symptoms and signs may not be recognized in their early stages. That's why we're learning about diabetes today. We need to know the signs if we want to get prompt diagnosis and treatment. If any of you have these symptoms, you should be checked for diabetes. It's very important to catch diabetes early so it can be controlled and the person can live a normal, healthy life. We don't know exactly why people get diabetes. Scientists all around the world are working hard to find a cure for diabetes, but the exact cause is still not clear. We do know that you can't catch diabetes from someone else. Also, eating a lot of sugar does not in itself cause diabetes, but eating too much and being overweight does have a major effect on the disease. As I've said, we don't know exactly why diabetes occurs, but a lot is known about who is likely to develop diabetes. If the disease runs in your family, then your chance of developing diabetes is increased. One of the most important things to recognize is that being overweight and not getting enough exercise really increase the chances of getting type 2 diabetes. 80% of adults are overweight when they find out that they have diabetes. Being overweight contributes to the development of the disease. Also, as we get older, our likelihood of developing diabetes increases. We can't do much about that. Another important thing that has become evident over the past few years is that diabetes occurs more often in Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Native Americans. A doctor may suspect diabetes if a person complains of excessive thirst, frequent urination, fatigue, blurred vision, skin infections, etc. The diagnosis may be confirmed by running tests that measure the amount of glucose in the blood. Diabetes can be a very serious disease if it is not controlled, just like heart trouble or high blood pressure. High levels of glucose in the blood can cause serious complications. Diabetes and its complications are the third leading cause of death by disease in the United States. Diabetes is the #1 cause of new cases of blindness in the United States in adults under age 65. There are 5,000 new cases each year caused by diabetes. The blindness can usually be prevented by early diagnosis and treatment. Diabetes is the #1 disease cause of amputation in the United States and is responsible for almost 50% of all lower extremity amputations. Diabetes is the #1 cause of new cases of kidney failure requiring dialysis or transplant. Diabetes is the #1 disease cause of impotence. People with diabetes have twice as many heart attacks and 3 times as many strokes. So you can see why you need to know the warning signs of diabetes and see a doctor if you have the symptoms. It is important to treat diabetes even if you think you may only have a little sugar in the blood. A person will usually feel better and have fewer symptoms of diabetes and will lower the chances of developing long-term complications if diabetes is well controlled. If you have diabetes, you can control it. Your doctor and the medical professionals who work with him or her can help you understand diabetes and learn how you can control it in order to live a long and healthy life. Remember, if you or someone you know has a history of diabetes in the family, excessive thirst, frequent urination, especially at night, fatigue, lack of energy, and is overweight, call a doctor to schedule a checkup for diabetes.